I suspect that my wife has cheated on me and now I don't even know if our unborn baby is mine. Apologies in advance. This is a very long story, and I'll try to be as detailed yet direct as possible. My wife, F32, and I, M27, experienced some relationship problems caused by an ex-boyfriend of hers that I believe to still be affecting us today. For some context, we first met when we were studying overseas and working part-time together at the same restaurant. I'm from Australia and she is from France. After a few shifts together, we became friends and then eventually started dating. I was 19, and she was 24 at the time. We dated for a little over 3 years before moving back to my home country, and 2 years after moving, we decided to get married. The problem started when my wife and I just got engaged. We decided to do the obligatory social media announcement posts informing everyone about our exciting news. Around a week later when I was sent a message request by an Instagram account I didn't know but saw that my wife and the person followed each other, so I thought it was one of her old school friends or something and decided to accept the request. By then, I had gotten over 100 messages from my wife's friends and family. I'd never met congratulating us, so I was expecting this message request to be more of the same. Instead of a congratulatory message and an introduction as to who they were, I was sent a bunch of screenshots of messenger chats that were in French and a message that followed saying that I should read these conversations to know how my fiancé is. I was feeling that something was a bit off but still believing that this person was a family member or friend of my wife that's English wasn't very good. I decided to translate the screenshots to be able to respond to them. Naively, I translated them to think that they'd just be some cute messages to only read that it was conversations between two people. The topics included the recounting of sexual encounters, the sexual acts that they had performed, boyfriends, and how inferior Asian guys are to white guys. I am Asian by the way. I sent a message back to the person asking who the messages were between. They replied, saying that it was my new shut wife, and sent 3 sex tapes. I was in shock, and immediately, thoughts that she had cheated on me filled my mind. After sitting for a while and trying to comprehend what had happened, I decided that I would watch the videos to try to see if it is actually my wife in them. Later that night, after my wife had fallen asleep, I decided to watch the videos believing that there would be no way that the woman I had been living with for 5 years could do something like this. But to my disappointment, I confirmed that all videos were of her. The first 2 of the videos appeared to have the same guy and the third video and a different guy. To say I was furious was an understatement. I had literally watched the woman I wanted to spend the rest of my life with fucking not 1, but 2 other guys. The most painful and infuriating things for me was seeing her acting in ways she never did with me and also doing certain sexual acts with other guys that I really wanted to try but she downright refused to do with me even after 5 years of dating and a proposal. I decided that I needed to confront her, thinking that she had cheated on me with a bunch of other guys. I wanted her to explain to me why she did it. After staying awake and waiting through the entire night and not being able to waiting anymore, I woke her up at 6 a.m. and showed her everything that was sent to me and asked her to explain what this all was. She immediately started hyperventilating, then began to cry. She kept repeatedly apologizing and begging me not to leave her and was like this for a good 10 minutes. After managing to calm her down, she explained that she never cheated on me and these videos were taken before we had met and that she didn't even know these videos existed. She also tried reassuring me that the messages were between her and her best friend and they would share everything about their lives with each other. She said the things they talked about were from so long ago that it felt like a different person had written the messages. She kept repeating that the things she said in those messages made her feel deep shamed and regret. It was so embarrassing to her that she ever acted and spoke like that. To try prove she wasn't cheating, she showed me the chat history between her and her best friend and found the exact same sections of the conversations in the messages between them and saw that they were from long before we had met. She also explained to me that the guy who sent me the message on Instagram was her first boyfriend from high school in France. He was apparently very emotionally and mentally manipulative during the time they were together, and for her to get any sort of affection or praise from him, she would do what he wanted and let him do whatever he wanted to her. She said she didn't understand how he was able to get the screenshots or the sex tapes that he didn't even take. We eventually came to conclusion that he had hacked into her account somehow. She said that the 2 guys in the videos were short-term Korean boyfriends from when she first moved to overseas. To say I was relieved was an understatement, but I still had the feeling of disgust when I looked at my wife. Over the next few months, I tried pretending that everything was okay, but I couldn't get over what I had seen. She was a completely different woman in my eyes. I know body count shouldn't matter, but reading the messages how many guys she slept with really bugged the shit out of me. We had told each other our body counts in the past and I wasn't bothered with it at all. She literally could have told me any number and I think I would have been fine with it as long as it was the truth, but now that I know that not only did she lie about the amount of men she had been with, but the fact that half of those men were guys I knew quite well and considered friends destroyed me. I eventually told her how I felt when she blew up at me one day for not wanting to have sex with her. She started crying again and asked if we should cancel the wedding. I said we should consider it but not act on anything yet, hoping the way I was feeling was just a phase and that I would eventually get over it. The last thing I wanted was for my friends and family to ask why we're not getting married anymore and me having to explain the things that happened. We agreed to go to couples counseling together with the goals of fixing our relationship and getting married on the date we had set before that shit happened. We found couples counseling to be very helpful, and one of the best things we both liked while at our sessions was, we were able to try verbally express what we were feeling and literally have it translated perfectly into a cohesive explanation by our couples counselor. After 10 sessions, we had been given a list of strategies for us to use together to mend our relationship, and I had been referred to a psychologist to some private sessions that I was super beneficial. At this stage everything was almost much back to as it was before I was sent the messages, but I honestly never quite felt the same or trusted my wife again the way I used to. We did end up going through with the wedding believing that my wife's past shouldn't affect my feelings towards her, and that if we did end up breaking up, it would effectively mean that her ex succeeded in his objective and would have got what he wanted. About a year after our wedding, my wife planned a trip to France to visit all the family and friends. I was originally meant to go with her but couldn't as I had just been given a promotion and had only been in the position about a month. While she was on her trip I get another message on Instagram from her ex saying, "She only likes me," followed by another sex tape of her. After watching for a few seconds, I just assumed it was another old video that was taken and blocked him. I planned to show my wife what he sent but ending up totally forgetting about the whole thing. Fast forward to today. We have been married for almost 2 years now and have a baby on the way. During one of her obstetrician appointments that I went to with her, there was talk of her possible due dates and around what day she would have conceived. While sitting there and listening, I was doing the math in my head and realized something wasn't adding up. The period she would have had to have conceived is when she was back in France to visiting her family. I stayed quiet and convinced myself that I obviously wasn't calculating correctly because I've always been shit at math, but I had remembered what her ex had sent me and had a gut feeling that something was very wrong. Eventually my insecurities got the better of me and I ended up watching the video he sent trying to find any clues of when it was taken. Unfortunately, I concluded that the video must have been taken at some point when we were together, as I could see a scar on her pubic area that she had given herself by waxing when we were on our honeymoon. After thinking about this for a while, I've decided not to confront her with what I know. I'm not going to ask friends or family for support, I'm not going to go to counseling, the less people that know the better. I don't think I can live with the shame of people knowing that my wife is giving birth to another man's child. I'm going to wait for the baby to be born to see if it is mine before I make any final decisions. Thank you everyone who read everything I had to say. I really need to get this out, and not being able to tell anyone what I was going through was driving me insane. Edit, I've had a few comments questioning the timeline. Our wedding was in September 2022. Her trip to France was in mid-December 2023, and she was there for about 5 weeks. The due date for the baby is in late September. Update. First of all, I would like to thank everyone who commented with advice and also those people who criticized my thoughts and actions. Reading multiple perspectives about my situation helped open my narrowed view and I think gave me a more balanced perspective. I'm not too sure how I should write this update since there's so much information that was dropped on me and I'm not too sure to put it into words. It honestly feels like my life was pulled out from under me and I'm not too sure how to comprehend it all at the moment. A lot of people criticized me for not telling my wife about the latest video, and a lot of you also suggested that I check the EXIF data to see what date the video was created. Following everyone's advice, I did both. I first checked the metadata to see the creation date, which showed that it was taken on the 1st of January 2024 at 1:18 a.m. It was sent to me the 6th of January 2024. I kept in mind that people were saying that data can easily be edited and didn't take the newfound information too seriously even though it looked like a relatively recent video. After seeing the metadata, I sat her down on the couch to tell her about her video. I went into the conversation fully prepared with a list of things to say I had made with my therapist. I made sure not to make accusations or even make anything I said sound like an accusation, and was 100% prepared for her to blow up at me for not telling her about it sooner. My therapist gave me a guide of how I should deliver the information and how I should attempt to give her back control of the situation by offering to show her the video, letting her watch it on her own and deleting it in front of her when she was ready. I started by saying that I had received another sex tape from her ex, and when I received it, then I went into why I didn't tell her immediately after receiving it or after she got back from her trip. After giving my explanation, I asked her if she wanted to see the video, which she said yes to, so I gave her my phone and she pretty much immediately started the video as soon as I handed my phone over to her, which didn't give me a chance to get up and leave the room to let her watch it on her own. As soon as I heard the audio from the video, I immediately stood up and was turning to walk to a different room when she grabbed my pant leg and started profusely apologizing. I said there was nothing to apologize for, as this was from before she met me, and that I should be apologizing to her for keeping it from her. She asked me why I decided to tell her now, and I told her the truth about my concerns about the due date and how it wasn't quite making sense in my head, and that's when she lost it. She grabbed my hand and kept saying it was a mistake and that she wasn't thinking straight because she was drunk. My heart just dropped and I knew instantly what she meant by her repetitive ramblings. I told her to tell me what exactly happened or I'd leave immediately. Long story short, she cheated on me when she went on her trip to France with her ex that was sending me the screenshots and videos. They ended up having sex after catching up at a New Year's Eve party they were both at. They're from a small town in central France with only a population of a few thousand, and apparently, they had seen each other at the local supermarket a few days after her arriving at her hometown. My wife and her ex are from the same friendship group. They all went to the same kindergarten, primary school, middle school, and high school, which is how they ended up at the same New Year's Eve party. She also told me that her ex had admitted to hacking into her Facebook account to gain access to the sex tapes she had made shared with her other exes. Although calling what he did hacking makes it sound quite sophisticated, she hadn't changed her password since high school and he still knew them when he got access to all her accounts. So fucking dumb. She begged me not to divorce her and tried to bargain with me, promising it would be the only time she'd ever cheat, promising that she'll be the best wife to me, letting me have sex with any and as many women I'd like, and even stooped so low as to offer sexual acts. I said I would only consider staying if she would do two things: give me her phone so I can go through her messages and get a paternity test done. She instantly agreed to the paternity test but was a bit more hesitant about handing her phone over, but eventually agreed. While looking through her phone, I found more evidence that she cheated on me on New Year's Day, as well as evidence that she had cheated me one other time from her period tracker app. She uses the app to track her for her periods and sexual activity. I just had to go to the dates where I wasn't in the same country as her and see if she had sex or not. Unfortunately for her, she was very diligent with keeping track of her sexual activities. By this point I had already made up my mind about the relationship and just left. I'm currently staying at a hotel and will be moving into my apartment that I had been trying to rent out for a while. I've spoken to both my solicitor and my wife and have agreed to go to the mandatory counseling in order for me to be able to go through with the divorce, which will start in October. We've also agreed to get the paternity test done after the baby is born, and I got my in-laws plane tickets to come to Australia earlier than originally planned so they can look after their daughter. Update 2. 3 months later. It's been quite a while since my last post, and over the last month I've been getting so many people asking for an update on my life, but more specifically asking about the results paternity test. A lot has changed since my last update, especially the living arrangements with my wife. I can happily say that I am the father. I was with my wife in the hospital birthing suite when my son was born and stayed with her the 5 days at the maternity ward. We got a paternity test even though I was fairly sure that he was mine when he was born. He looks a bigger-eyed version of me when I was a newborn. About a week after getting the swabs done, the positive parentage results came back. Before my son was born, my wife and I had been living separately, with the only having interactions us having would be her sending me daily messages wishing me well and wishing me good night. After my son was born, we were still living apart, but I would go over every to help feed and change him. We still had minimal interactions and would only really talk to each other once a week for our mandatory marriage counseling that we had go to in order to get a divorce. We had seen psychologists from 2 different clinics and I felt like they were both trying to gaslight me into thinking that I was being unreasonable for wanting to divorce my cheating wife, and one of them had even said that I shouldn't expect a modern marriage to be completely monogamous in this day and age. The first sessions of counseling at the first clinic seemed pretty standard, a lot of telling each other how we feel with the counselor in the background only speaking when providing prompts to get us talking. If the counseling session continued as it was, it would have been fine, but as soon as she suggested that we should accept the idea of bringing other people into the bedroom to better understand and connect with one another is when I started looking for different psychologists. The second psychologist we saw spent 2 sessions trying to convince me that it's normal for married couples to have sex with people outside of the marriage, and that it would be selfish of me to make the baby grow up without a father figure in the home even if he isn't mine. This was before we got the paternity test results back. From that moment on I decided that there was no point to me going to marriage counseling. I told my wife that I'd put the divorce proceeding on hold only if she agreed to sign a post-nup, which she immediately signed as soon as I gave them to her. My plan is to just wait a year before filing for divorce without any restrictions and hid mandatory marriage counseling, and now at least my assets are somewhat protected. Currently I have moved back in with my wife but are still sleeping in separate rooms. I decided to move back in just to make it easier for me to spend time with my son and to also be able to look after him when my wife and her parents need a break. After being with him for what is almost a month now, I decided that I would be physically present in my son's life and help raise him. I believe that it is my duty as his biological father to give him the best life possible, no matter the discomfort I feel of having to interact with his mother. What I am trying to think about now is how that is going to possible after the divorce and how that will impact his emotional and mental development. Are there other people out there who are able to raise their children this way, and if so, how are you coping with the arrangement? And thank for all those who were concerned about my love life, but nothing is happening. I haven't though about dating or sex since finding out about my wife's cheating. Edit, I'm still going to get a divorce. I'm just waiting until the courts allow me to file for a divorce without having to go through mandatory marriage counseling. I have also made my wife sign a post-nuptial agreement so I can save as much of my assets as possible when we do divorce.